Good morning, welcome back. My last video I left you with a decision that I had to make. Was I going to use and keep my D780 for weddings, or was I going to change to a Z6ii? And I wasn't sure. I loved the D780. It's by far the best DSLR I've ever had. Absolutely wonderful bit of kit. But my problem, if you watch the video, if you haven't seen the video, just maybe subscribe and click the bell, and then you'll see the other videos. But my main problem that I had with the D780 was that I had the Z5, which is a great camera to do the thing I wanted to do, which is to be a quiet, unobtrusive camera that I can use at a wedding to just go around, get shots of the guests without really being noticed. Whereas the D780 DSLR, bit bigger, especially if you've got a 50, a bigger lens on it, which is what I like to use for some shots. So that was my setup: the D780 with the Z5 with a very small lens on, and I'll come on to that in a bit more in a minute. But the problem I had was that the Z5 had taken over as my main camera from the D780. That was never my intention when I got the Z5 just over a year ago. It was supposed to be a backup and, really second camera. But because of the features, because of the face detect, the IAF, the quietness, and the video and all the other stuff, it gradually became more and more my main camera. And the point I got to a few weddings ago, when I started this year, 2022, constantly changing from a Z5 to a D780. They're both made by Nikon, they've both got the same menu, but they're very different cameras. The button layout is different, the way I use them is different. On the Z cameras I use the preset user functions on the top here on the dial. On the D780 I would never even bother to do that. They're just very different animals, and it was just detraction from my photography. You pick up the camera and now which one is this? Right, I want to change the focus, and it's just makes you think about having to work with the camera rather than focusing on what you should be shooting. And so I found that it had got to a point where it was a distraction. So was I going to change the D780 to a Z6ii? Now, I've obviously, like you, seen lots of reports about the Z6ii. Some of them a bit critical of the autofocus, some of them a bit critical of its low light abilities, and that kind of thing. So I thought the best thing to do was to get one, use it at a wedding, compare it to the D780, make a decision. And to save you watching the whole of this video, decision made, Z6ii. Actually Z6ii without a doubt, for a few reasons. And none of this is to say that the D780 is not still the best DSLR I've ever had. It's just that for what I do, for weddings, some of the features that come with mirrorless cameras make my life easier, and I do get more better quality shots using this than with the D780. Right, so what features on this Z6ii are really useful for a wedding photographer? Face and eye detect, it's got to be. Now the Z5 has got face and eye detect, but it's only as a full screen, and I had the Z5 set up so that if I had a scene where I had lots of faces and I couldn't get it to pick the right face, then I would simply switch the dial from U2 to U3. That would change it to a dynamic 9 focus point, and I could focus on whoever I wanted to. Still a bit clumsy, because the D9 point you have to move manually with the joystick to get the right composition. And weddings and other events, you've sometimes only literally got 1 or 2 seconds, if that, sometimes, to get the shot. Which meant I sometimes ended up switching very quickly to U3, just wherever the focus point was, the D9, focus on my subject, recompose, shoot, and that was quicker than trying to move the focus point. Not ideal, because I tend to use spot metering, so I would often find shots that were completely the wrong exposure because I'd focused on my subject, recomposed, and in doing so, of course, the spot moves, so the exposure changes. Yes, I've got the F2 button set up to lock the exposure, but there's so much happening at weddings. It's sometimes very easy to do that, get the shot, look at the back of the screen, review the image, and think, oh god, the exposures, a couple of stops. It's a couple of stops off because I didn't have that fraction of a second just to hit the exposure lock, and that kind of thing. So the Z6ii, with the update, whenever that was, has now got a smaller box that has face and eye detect. So it means I can now be selective about which person or couple that it's going to use to focus, to use the face and eye autofocus on. That makes my life easier. But that said, I find that I'm actually using on the Z6ii, when I used it at a wedding, which was 3-4 days ago, I'm using the tracking box. So I have my Z6ii set to wide area, face detect obviously on, but if I've got a lot of people in there and I can't get it to pick the face I want, I can switch the user functions to U3, which instead of being D9 is now the smaller box to pick up faces, or just leave it as it is, and I have F1 set to focus tracking, hit that, box comes up in the centre of the screen, put it on whoever I want, back button focus, recompose, shoot. I'm blown away by the results. I haven't got a single shot out of focus, honestly. I took 1,097 photos at the last wedding. I've selected 194 that I've edited, and they're now exporting from Lightroom as we speak. And I originally selected about 220, 230, I think, which is the way I normally do it. Select a few more photos than I'm actually going to give to the clients, because I know one or two won't be quite right. People will have their eyes shut and whatever, it won't be quite right. I did find 2 that were out of focus of the 230 that I selected, and both of those are with the Z5 with the 28mm lens on. I'm not sure why, but there we go. 2 out of 230. Not a single one of those was from the Z6ii. And I'm really, really impressed with the image quality coming out of the Z6ii. I've inadvertently set up one of my user settings, I think it's U2, to do the focusing I want, but I left the ISO, the auto ISO, so that it could go up to 51,200 maximum ISO, whereas I would normally bring that down to 25. And I've actually got a couple of shots where it went to 51,200. I would never have known unless I looked at the top of the screen to see what the ISO was, because there was very little noise. I didn't need to do much adjustment on the exposure. If I'd have tried to lift the shadows a lot and this kind of stuff, well, yes, I would have got a lot more noise. But the noise was, unless I zoomed in to 50-60%, I really couldn't see the noise. As a photo in a wedding album, it would be perfectly okay with no additional noise reduction than I would put on all of my shots. I put a little bit on all of the shots. So low light ISO, low light image quality is every bit as good as a D780, and I think it's probably better. I've used my favourite lens of all time now. I've had this for 6-7 months now. It's the 58 1.4G lens. On the D780, it produced photos which took me back to when I used the D700. It's got, I don't know, some sort of film quality about it. It's not tack sharp. It doesn't look like a modern iPhone on steroids type shot, which is, you know, ridiculously crisp and clear and sharp. It's got character. It's got feeling. It conveys emotion way better, I think, to my mind, than the modern lenses do. And when I put this on the Z6ii, because we've now got image stabilization, I don't know if that's the reason, but the images do actually seem sharper. Not that that's a big deal for me, but I'm not going to say I don't want it. They seem sharper and I don't know, just more vibrant than even I got from the D780. You probably can't see this shot here, but this was the first dance shot. And the colours are absolutely stunning. I'm sure if I'd have taken that with the D780, they would have been pretty similar. But I don't know, there's just something even more gorgeous, more artistic. So I'm absolutely super happy with the Z6ii. So my setup now for weddings is the Z6ii with the 58 1.4G lens on, and the Z5 with a 28 f2.8, the little, someone called it a muffin lens. It's not a pancake lens, it's not small enough to be called a pancake lens, but you could certainly call it a muffin lens, and I think that's probably a very good name. It's very small, very light, and actually gets some very good shots. That's a lovely combination of focal lengths. For some of the shots later on in the wedding, maybe the speeches or something like that, I would pop the 85 1.4G lens on the Z6ii, and I would pop the 40mm f2 muffin lens on the Z5. And these are really cheap, cheap Z-mount lenses. The cheapest of the entire Nikon range. But that doesn't mean they're really low quality. Again, I really like the quality. Because they're not the modern design of mirrorless camera lenses, which tend to be very long, not that big, a bit like a Sigma Art lens that I used to use on my Sony. Long, not too big, and heavy. This thing, it's mostly plastic, if not all plastic, doesn't weigh anything, but the image quality is absolutely brilliant. They seem to have gone back to giving me a lens which is more like an F-mount lens in the terms of the image quality, what it looks like, its character. It's not going to be as sharp as the more expensive Z-mount equivalents, but I don't need that super sharp look for photos taken at 28mm. Anyway, that's my little ramble for today. What I'm going to do from now on actually is, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm working towards becoming a fellow with the Society of Wedding and Portrait Photographers. And that's a pretty long, slow process. I've got to learn what kind of photos they're looking for to approve an application to become a fellow. And before that, I'm actually being qualified as an associate. And that means, again, getting the right photos for what they're looking for. It's not just about getting good photos, because what is a good photo? I think this is a good photo, but that would never get me a qualification. I think my clients think that's a good photo, but it would never get me a qualification. So I'm going to take you along in some of the future videos, some of the sort of work that I'm doing and how I'm changing my photography for some shots, so I can take those shots and I can put them into my submission to get qualification. And there's very few videos out there that deal with anything like this. So I'm going to do a few videos in the coming weeks about getting those sort of shots, how at a wedding, I'm sort of focusing on maybe 2 or 3 shots, and those shots are not for the client, they're for me, for my submission. Just so that you know what sort of what work goes into getting those sort of photos. You might find it useful. I hope you do. Please subscribe and hit the bell, and I will speak to you again. Enjoy your day. Bye.